I fought tooth and nail to grab 2 entry tickets for the safe zone, only for my husband to hand one straight to a young mother without a second thought. Children represent humanity's future in the end times, Keed reasoned, desperate to secure a replacement ticket. I was brutally assaulted and left permanently deaf in one ear. When I poured out my agony to him, his reply was cold. You've only lost hearing, but the thief you fought for that ticket would have lost his life. On our trek toward the sanctuary, a gang of thugs set their lecherous sights on me and tried to rape me. He stood by and watched without lifting a finger. Stabbed 7 times. I fought back and killed 3 attackers in self-defense. Staring at the corpses strewn across the ground, he mourned dramatically. They were no match for you to begin with. Why did you have to take their lives? Once inside the safe zone, an anonymous tip framed me as a cold-blooded killer who'd slaughtered innocent civilians. I begged my husband to testify on my behalf and tell the truth. An innocent soul needs no defense. Justice will never wrong an honest person for no reason. He dismissed me flatly. I was locked away in the prison, tortured and repeatedly assaulted by 10 inmates until I breathed my last. Meanwhile, writing the reputation for kindness he'd carefully cultivated along our journey. He married the safe zone leader's wealthy daughter and climbed to the pinnacle of wealth and status. When I opened my eyes again, I was transported back to the day of the ticket scramble. The blistering sun hung high in the sky, and suffocating scorch heat hung thick in the air. 7 or 8 men lay sprawled on the pavement, bruised and whimpering in agony, battered and covered in my own blood. I limped over to their gang leader after knocking out the last foe, holding out my palm sharply. Hand over the tickets. Trembling from head to toe, the terrified man surrendered the precious slips of paper without hesitation. This was the law of the high-temperature apocalypse. Only the strong survive. My husband emerged from the shelter of the crowd, staring at me with disappointed disapproval. Xiao Yu, the world is already cruel enough for everyone struggling just to stay alive. It's only a single ticket was beating these men half to death really necessary. The familiar words pulled every horrific memory from my past life to the forefront of my mind, alongside his falsely noble, unworldly face that masked endless greed and cowardice. We grew up in the same village. A top student from childhood, he was always the golden child every parent praised to their kids. I came from a destitute household and enlisted in the military right after junior high, serving 8 years before discharge, assigned as a college PE teacher at his university. I met him when he was a second-year postgraduate majoring in military engineering. On my first work day, he volunteered to show me around campus. I treated him to meals, and we slowly grew close as friends. Later, he kept dropping ambiguous hints that tricked me into believing he returned my affection. Clouded by my childhood admiration for him, I fell head over heels. I wrote him a love confession, yet he brushed me off, claiming I was too young to tell platonic fondness from romantic love. My best friend convinced me he was only testing my devotion. Determined to prove myself, I spent 3 months' full salary on a brand new laptop for him, then emptied my entire military severance pay to shower him with luxury goods. It wasn't long before he finally agreed to date me. I'm buried in academic research with lofty ambitions for my career. Romance was never on my agenda. He sighed feigningly. Yet I cannot bear watching you waste your hard-earned money on me any longer. It was the textbook line of a manipulative deadbeat who happily took every benefit while pretending reluctance. After we officially became a couple, I poured well over $1,000,000 into supporting his lifestyle. While he focused on his studies, I footed every bill for our dates and daily meals. Every time I called to ask what he'd eaten for lunch, he claimed nothing but steamed buns and pickled mustard greens. My heart ached for him. So I set aside 2,000 yuan each month from my 5,000 yuan salary for his living expenses. He claimed he'd save every cent to fund his future scientific research, even after covering his monthly stipend. I regularly treated him to fancy dinners to make sure he never went hungry. I found out much later that all that money had been spent on hiring prostitutes. Every single expense in his daily life followed the same manipulative script. I bought him entire wardrobes of designer clothing. When he grumbled about sticking to one brand being wasteful, I splurged on even pricier luxury labels. He complained about noisy, violent roommates, yet insisted off-campus rentals were not worth the cost. Worried for his safety, I paid $2,000 monthly to rent him a private apartment. He claimed walking everywhere saved money, so I spent $10,000 to buy him a high-end bicycle. Time and again he donned the guise of a detached, unmaterialistic gentleman to win my sympathy and bleed me dry of my savings. That alone would have been tolerable. But his exploitation only worsened, a year into our relationship. His school rejected his research proposal and handed the coveted project to a well-connected classmate instead. He made no effort to fight for his rightful spot. When I prepared to confront the school administration on his behalf, he blocked me. We're all fellow students. He only wanted to polish his academic resume. Why ruin everyone's reputation over this? Days later he sank into a gloomy slump, lamenting how the country would suffer from losing his groundbreaking research. Alarmed by his despair, I paid 100,000 yuan out of pocket to fund his lab trials. Within 2 years, my entire 800th Sanduan military severance was gone, plus hundreds of thousands more from my regular paychecks. My best friend repeatedly warned me he was using me as a cash cow from day one. Only after my money, refusing to believe her, I drifted apart from my closest confidant. Once my funds dried up to the point I couldn't even afford takeout, I cut his monthly allowance in half and urged him to pick up part-time work. Your fellow postgrads all take side gigs earning thousands monthly. Why sit idle at home? He flew into a furious rage the second I suggested employment. The state poured countless resources into my education. I will never demean my talent slaving for private corporations. My expertise belongs solely to serving the nation. I'd once bought into his grand ambitions and respected his refusal to waste his skill on odd jobs. But after finishing his graduation thesis, he did nothing but laze around gaming all day with zero motivation to improve his lot. I later uncovered he'd never worked a single day in his life, hiding behind schoolwork even when his own parents sold their blood to fund his tuition. When graduate institute admissions rolled around, I dreamed he'd land a well-paid research scientist position, only for him to flunk the entrance exam. He moped that post-grad burnout left him a handful of points short of acceptance. How can I contribute to my country without this research role? He sighed miserably. I comforted him faithfully. Your noble aspirations make you my hero no matter what path you take. He pulled me into a grateful embrace. Yet the truth eventually surfaced. His grades had never qualified him for the institute at all, and without my funding for his graduation project, he would have failed to graduate entirely. After commencement, I pulled strings through my family to secure him a university teaching post and pressed him to retry the institute entrance exam while working. He insisted the admission process was riddled with corruption and required costly private research projects to pass. I borrowed 200,000 yuan to fund his new research venture. Soon after sinking the money into his project, he abandoned all progress, spending every free moment gaming after finishing his daily classes on his modest teacher's salary. When I brought up the potential patent profits from finished research, he slapped me hard across the face in a fit of anger. Are you just another gold-digging woman fixated on money? Do you love me or my hypothetical fortune? I broke down completely, finally acknowledging my best friend had been right all along. His lofty ideals were empty lies. He'd never loved me, targeting my finances from our very first meeting. I longed to end things. Yet stubborn regret kept me trapped, having wasted 2 years of youth and over $1 million yuan plus mounting debt. At 25, pressured by my family to settle down, I blindly married him. Marriage only deepened his apathy and laziness. When his mother fell critically ill requiring 300,000 yuan for emergency surgery, we had zero savings left thanks to our mortgage, while his university teaching credential guaranteed easy high-paying side work earning 10,000 monthly with minimal effort. He scoffed at my pleas to pick up extra income. I'd rather remain idle than debase my gifted mind for petty cash. Your mother is dying, I screamed, glued to his phone screen. He replied indifferently, life and death are fated. She leaves it all to destiny. I'd wanted to drive a blade into him on the spot. His mother had treated me like her own daughter, and I couldn't watch her perish for lack of funds. Alongside my full-time PE teaching job, I juggled 3 separate part-time jobs. Collapsing from exhaustion multiple times, neighbors condemned his filial neglect and cruel treatment of his wife. Yet every night upon returning home exhausted, he'd drone on philosophically, All humans face inevitable death eventually. Why torture yourself so? She's your birth mother. I sobbed. Once hospital bills fell overdue and the medical center phoned him directly for payment, he unleashed a vicious tirade at me. How can you call yourself a decent daughter-in-law letting hospital calls reach me? After everything mom's done for you, do you intend to kill her? Crushed by unfair blame, I resolved to file for divorce and cut all ties with him. Not long afterward, the catastrophic high-temperature apocalypse descended. Temperatures rocketed to 60 degrees Celsius, littering city streets with countless corpses. On her deathbed, his mother knelt and begged me through tears. Don't leave Wang Hao. He's always been aloof and uncompetitive by nature. Without you to protect him, he cannot survive these chaotic end times. Softened by her final plea, I agreed to stay married. Law and order collapsed entirely amid the extreme heat. Starvation drove survivors to rampant looting and violent robbery. Honoring my promise to his late mother, I was forced to grow ruthless to guard our home. I crippled thieves' hands and blinded intruders who tried to rob us. Every time I defended our property with force, my husband scolded my cruelty. They only beg for a bite of food. Why resort to such vicious harm? Just share scraps to send them away. After reprimanding me, he'd publicly apologize to wrongdoers in the neighborhood group chat and invite strangers to our home for free wound medicine. While everyone praised his boundless kindness, I bore all the community's vicious gossip and hatred. When our residential complex lost water and power entirely, I escorted him on a grueling cross-country escape to the designated safe zone. Upon arrival, unknown accusers dragged me to a public tribunal, charging me with cold-blooded murder of innocent civilians. I begged him to testify the truth. Those men had intended to gang rape me, and I'd only defended myself against violent attackers. Instead, he condemned me before the entire crowd. Chin Yu, how many innocent lives have you slaughtered along our journey? How can I possibly back your baseless claims? Stunned by his betrayal, I reminded him desperately. They planned to assault me right in front of you before killing you. Have you forgotten? Slap. A sharp blow landed across my cheek, denying his cowardly inaction while I was attacked. He fabricated lies outright. You murdered them for the gold they carried. A ruthless robber-killer. How can you betray everything I've done for you? I whispered in disbelief. He adopted the wounded victim's posture for the onlooking mob. Since the apocalypse began, you've lived for nothing but fighting and violence, leaving me to clean up every bloody mess you create. I crumpled to the ground as furious spectators roared insults, labeling me a heartless killer while showering Wang Hao with sympathy for putting up with my savagery. When I tried to defend myself again, he repeated his hollow catchphrase for the court. An innocent soul needs no defense. Justice will never wrong an honest person for no reason. The presiding judge trusted Wang Hao's sterling public reputation implicitly, and I was locked inside the safe zone's maximum security prison, filled with violent convicts. 10 inmates repeatedly abused and tortured me to death. Right before my final breath, Wang Hao arrived with the safe zone leader's sheltered young daughter to gloat over his dying ex-wife. The privileged young woman glowed with marital bliss and stared down at me with disdain. You threw away a kind, outstanding man. Your suffering is self-inflicted. After she left, Wang Hao lingered alone and revealed the full truth. You're dying anyway. So I'll set the record straight. I'd already connected with the commander's daughter mid-journey to the safe zone, and you were never my first lover. Everything clicked into place. His gentle, unworldly persona was nothing but a calculated mask. He drained my finances all these years while cheating on me endlessly. Post-apocalypse, his carefully curated Good Samaritan fame turned him into a respected public figure, letting him bond online with the safe zone's heiress. Long before we reached the compound gates, he'd mapped out his entire scheme. Perform charitable acts to build prestige, win the young lady's affection, and eliminate me to clear his path into elite circles. The false witnesses who framed me for murder had all been paid off by him. The gang that assaulted me had been goaded into attacking by his secret provocation to force my violent self-defense. Even the 10 convicts who tortured me had been arranged on his orders. Watching me die with unclosed eyes, he left satisfied and twisted, snapped back to the present moment. A bitter smirk tugged my lips, cold hatred burning in my eyes. Mid-reverie, a young mother clutching her 3-month-old infant dropped to her knees before me with a desperate wail. I beg you for one ticket. I don't mind dying. But this baby is only 3 months old. In my past life, Wang Hao had berated me for heartlessness until I surrendered my spare ticket to her. Left with only one pass, I'd taken a dangerous high-risk bounty mission to earn a replacement ticket. Losing hearing in one ear after a brutal beating. This lifetime, I stared at her pleading form and spoke 2 icy words. No way. Bystanders immediately murmured critical comments about my cruelty. Wang Hao's brows knit tight, ordering sharply, Xiao Yu, give her the ticket at once. A lone mother with an infant faces impossible hardship in these end times. I shot back. Was my trek all the way from the southern provinces northward protecting you non-stop easy for a single woman? Stunned, speechless, all surrounding eyes shifted to his red-faced, humiliated form, many filled with open contempt, obsessed with his spotless reputation. He snapped defensively. You drag me into fleeing against my will with your constant fighting. I've long had no desire to keep living. I suppressed a cold sneer. He'd weaponized fake suicidal thoughts countless times before to force my devotion. If you truly wish to die, this ticket was meant for you anyway. It's yours to decide what to do with it. I pressed the ticket directly into his palm. Panic flashed across his face instantly. The sharp-witted mother latched onto his legs, begging again. You don't care about living, please spare the ticket for my helpless baby. Wang Hao threw a helpless glance my way. The ticket was won by your bloodied hands. I cannot make this call. The ticket belongs to you now, since you want to die. I wash my hands of your fate entirely. Cornered publicly between his saintly facade and the pleading mother, he had no choice but to hand over the ticket to preserve his image. Voice quivering with manufactured emotion, he proclaimed for the crowd, children are humanity's last hope. Live on carrying this future. Just then, the Safe Zone's rescue convoy pulled into the plaza. I turned and hurried toward the boarding checkpoint without hesitation. Xiao Yu, wait for me. He called after me in panic. You said you don't want to survive. Remember. I tossed over my shoulder without glancing back. At ticket verification, the guard checked our paired arrival and asked Wang Hao for his pass. He has no ticket. Process mine first, I said flatly. He grabbed my arm violently, eyes bloodshot. How can you abandon me to die here? I pried free of his grip with a faint smile. You wanted death, but I intend to stay alive. Every choice comes with consequences. Once past inspection, I paused to deliver a cutting parting blow. Quit playing the selfless martyr when you're terrified of dying. I boarded the vehicle as he flew into a screaming rage, kicking the truck wall repeatedly in despair. I'd assumed his death was sealed. Yet moments before departure, he scrambled aboard the truck. Fellow passengers whispered that after being stranded alone, he pretended to charge straight into a horde of zombies in a suicide attempt. The rescue squad's compassionate female captain Li Shui, familiar with his renowned benevolence, took pity and pulled him onto the vehicle against protocol. Only in her early 20s. Li Shui was a formidable combat fighter but hopelessly naive. Back in my previous life, she doted on Wang Hao throughout our journey. Once food ran scarce, his reckless decision to donate all rations to starving refugees lured a heavily armed private militia ambush that cost Li Shui her life while shielding the convoy. This lifetime, Wang Hao seethed with burning hatred toward me, while Li Shui, having heard his fabricated grievances, deemed me a vicious, cruel she-devil. As the convoy rolled onward, I leveraged my memories of the future to navigate around ruined roadways and mutated beast hordes, earning deep respect from every squad soldier except Li Shui. Whenever the vehicle halted for rest, she'd sneak off to comfort and counsel Wang Hao, their bond growing steadily closer. Riding Li Shui's preferential treatment, Wang Hao doled out her ration supplies as small favors to curry public favor. His luck soured halfway through our trip. One of Li Shui's smitten squadmates reported her biased favoritism to Safe Zone Command out of jealousy. Headquarters issued an immediate disciplinary ruling, demoting Li Shui to vice captain and forcing her public apology promising impartiality, barred from sneaking extra provisions to Wang Hao. His supply pool dried up rapidly. As overall group resources shrank, Fellow travelers grew openly disdainful of his entitled freeloading. During one roadside stop, the same mother who'd received Wang Hao's free ticket approached once more, dropping to her knees begging for sustenance. "I haven't eaten in 2 full days. Please spare any food you can." Wang Hao's jaw clenched tight. Lazy and useless at scavenging, he could only scrounge rotten scraps. Surrendering his remaining food meant starvation for himself. And surrounding onlookers' judgmental stares made his fake benevolence impossible to uphold. Desperate, he turned to me with pleading eyes. Ignoring his silent plea, I unwrapped a chocolate bar and took a slow, deliberate bite. Saliva pooling in his parched mouth after days of near starvation, he tried mending our relationship for access to my stockpiled food. "Xiao Yu, I've come to apologize. I was wrong about the ticket. Set aside your anger. I'm not upset," I replied coolly, adopting a brooding, earnest expression. He went on. "I truly planned to end my own life back then, but these days I've found a new will to live. The apocalypse cries out for skilled talents like me to realize my lifelong mission." I cut him short mid-speech. "Finished. I'm eating." He frowned in disapproval. "Can you not be reasonable?" I swallowed my pride to reconcile. "You ought to accept my apology. Stop humiliating me alongside that strange man on the bus." He referenced a past incident where a burly creep groped his face, which I'd beaten off. Only for him to demand I kneel and apologize to the harasser. A mocking laugh bubbled up my throat. Yet I spotted Li Shui approaching behind him and raised my voice intentionally. "If you still considered me your wife, you wouldn't grow so close to Li Shui." Unaware she stood within earshot. Wang Hao rushed to salvage his standing with the captain by denying any affection. "I love only you. Spending time with her was merely to make you jealous. I hold a tiny fondness for her. But our interactions are nothing but meaningless games." Li Shui's face drained of all color. Raw heartbreak etched across her features. "Miss Shen, if you love him, let him go. You two were never meant to be," she choked out, shooting Wang Hao a furious glare before storming away, left with no female ally. Wang Hao stood red-faced and humiliated. The following day's sweltering heat forced the driver to shut off air conditioning to conserve dwindling gasoline reserves, turning the passenger cabin into a stifling oven. Having eaten nothing for days, Wang Hao quickly succumbed to heat exhaustion. In my prior life, I'd held the driver at knife point to turn on AC and save him, branded a vicious shrew for my trouble. This time, I sat in the front row absorbed in my mobile video, ignoring his plight entirely. Dragging himself unsteadily to his feet, he whined for the entire cabin to hear. "Xiao Yu, I'm dying from the heat." Laid on the melodrama to tug at my dormant compassion. I pulled off my headphones and fixed him with a blank stare. "Anything else to say? You're clearly on your last legs. I'm fading fast. Want you speak a kind word. Die quickly if you're going to. Don't delay our journey's progress." Fuel is far too scarce to waste cooling one passenger while endangering every soul aboard. Every passenger echoed my reasoning, leaving Wang Hao beet red and collapsing unconscious in his seat from humiliation and heatstroke. Minutes later, the convoy halted abruptly. Li Shui rushed on board with the medic, overriding fuel restrictions to crank up AC and feed him water against unanimous passenger protests. Her reckless favoritism cost her the remainder of her rank. Headquarters issued an ultimatum. Any further preferential treatment for Wang Hao would result in his immediate execution. Stripped of his powerful protector, the convoy's local thugs set their sights on the defenseless man. At dusk, the crew led by gang leader Dian cornered Wang Hao, leaning in to slap his cheek mockingly. Dian jeered, "Noble do-gooder, my boys are starving. Fork over your food." Wang Hao darted a helpless glance toward me, and I watched with cold amusement without moving an inch. To preserve his virtuous facade, he handed over his last scraps of food, unsatisfied. A bulky lecherous gang member reached out to fondle his face and arms with lustful eyes. Years earlier, I'd beaten this creep senseless for the unwanted advance, only for Wang Hao to threaten suicide and jumping from the moving vehicle to coerce me into kneeling for forgiveness. Now I folded my arms, enjoying the show. "Qin Yu, stop standing there and let him assault me," Wang Hao shrieked. I tossed back his own well-worn philosophy right at him. "He's free to pursue whatever catches his fancy." Everyone's entitled to their hobbies. Don't be so unreasonable. The entire cabin burst into raucous laughter. Emboldened by the crowd's amusement, the brute dragged Wang Hao onto the floor. Pinning his head down and unbuckling his belt, pushed to a life-or-death corner, Wang Hao's crippling fear curdled into murderous rage, pulling a hidden pocket knife from his waistband. He stabbed the attacker dozens of times in a frenzied frenzy until the man lay lifeless on the floor. The vehicle stopped instantly after the homicide. Li Shui and the lead squad captain rushed on board to investigate, resentful of Wang Hao's hypocrisy. No single passenger spoke up in his defense. Diane's surviving cohorts twisted the truth to frame him as a cold premeditated killer. Covered in the victim's blood, Wang Hao scrambled toward me in desperation. Xiao Yu, tell them the truth, force this upon me. I smiled sweetly and parroted his infamous courtroom line. An innocent soul needs no defense. Justice will never wrong an honest person for no reason. Seated behind these seats, I truly saw nothing. The words snapped his fragile composure. Brandishing the bloody blade wildly, he screamed, "Fine. I'll get off this damned truck myself." He kicked open the window and leaped out, sprinting deep into the barren desert wasteland, distraught over his supposed peril. Li Shui hurled herself out the window to chase after him without hesitation. I knew lingering in this lawless desert put the entire convoy at mortal risk. If Li Shui perished, her high-ranking father at Safe Zone Command would retaliate against our whole group. Shifting blame onto me, grabbing my backpack and firearms, I jumped out to trail them both. We tracked Wang Hao across empty flatlands before the rumble of motorcycle engines echoed across the dunes. Over a dozen heavily armed mercenary bandits closing in with assault rifles. Wang Hao froze in abject terror, diving behind Li Shui and me to cower with his head buried between his knees. Taking cover behind a small embankment, Li Shui and I returned precise gunfire, cutting down nearly half the raiding party. Just as an enemy tossed a live grenade our way, Wang Hao's overwhelming panic drove him to abandon us entirely, sprinting alone toward distant safety. "Come back!" Li Shui screamed frantically. Hostile gunfire erupted immediately, a bullet tearing through her thigh and splattering Wang Hao with fresh blood as she crumpled to the ground. Immobilized, I laid down suppressing fire and roared at him, "Drag her behind the ridge for cover." But paralyzed by incoming bullets, he fled without a backward glance, leaving his savior to bleed out alone. Shock and hopelessness glazed Li Shui's eyes as she dragged herself inch by inch toward my cover, catching multiple more rounds mid-crawl. By the time I hauled her behind safety, her liver had been pierced clean through, unstoppable bleeding sealing her fatal fate. Loading her final pistol magazine, she fixed me with a bitter, dying gaze. "You never loved him." I realized the truth the second he abandoned us. Wang Hao said meeting me was the greatest luck of his life. He planned to divorce you the day after we met to build a new family with me. Sighing softly at the woman still trapped in his fabricated lies, I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the pre-recorded audio from when he begged me for food. "I love you only. Spending time with Li Shui was just to make you jealous. Every moment with her is meaningless fun." The familiar, heartless voice shattered Li Shui's last illusions. Her features contorted into a crazed grimace, blood leaking from her tear ducts as she laughed hysterically. "Wang Hao, you parasitic monster feeding off women's kindness. I'll kill you." Her pistol slipped from her weak grasp. Clutching my hand with her final strength, she begged, "Kill him for me." I closed her eyes gently. "I promise I will." Before I could hunt Wang Hao and pin Li Shui's murder on the surviving bandits, Captain Chen arrived with backup troops, wiping out the remaining outlaws. Enraged by Li Shui's death, he stormed over and landed 2 brutal slaps across Wang Hao's face. "You useless trash. Her blood is on your hands." Heavy fuel wasted from Li Shui's unauthorized AC usage left the convoy critically short on gasoline, forcing a detour to Jinjing City, the territory of a brutal 1,000-man private militia dubbed the Butcher Gang. The captain held an emergency meeting to vote on a risky city raid for supplies. I stepped forward and addressed Diane's remaining gang. "Sneaking the full convoy into the city draws too much attention. Leave 1 truck and a handful of men with me to source gasoline alone. The rest press on toward the safe zone to maximize survival odds." Captain Chen instantly grasped my logic. Fewer vehicles meant drastically lower fuel consumption for the rest of the group's journey home. I pointed at Diane's ruthless criminal crew. I don't need squad soldiers, leave these thugs behind to assist. These men had looted and murdered civilians long before the apocalypse. I'd never let them reach the safe zone alive and planned to eliminate the whole gang on this errand. Pressured by my superior combat prowess and the other travelers' unanimous condemnation, Diane had no choice but to comply, as the rest of the convoy prepared to depart. Wang Hao refused to board their vehicle, gazing at me with dramatic devotion. My poor judgment cost lives and stranded you here. As a man, I cannot flee to safety leaving you behind. I'll stay and help complete the mission. I fought the urge to gag. He had no concern for my safety. He knew my plans never court unnecessary danger, making staying by my side the surest path to survival. Branded a killer in the convoy after Li Shui's death. Captain Chen intended to drag him back for punishment at headquarters. Only by earning supply hunting merit could he rebuild his elite social standing within the safe zone. Snorting in disdain, I climbed into the driver's seat. Diane and his 6 remaining men piled into the rear cabin, leaving only the dangerous front passenger seat empty. In all our past escapes, I'd always shielded Wang Hao from this high-risk spot. Now he stood frozen with dread outside the vehicle, too scared to stay behind. If you've got guts, take the wheel, I jeered, red-faced under the group's mocking snickers. He had no option but to slump into the co-pilot seat. Following my foreknowledge, I navigated our truck straight toward an abandoned gas station. Cutting through a lawless slum ruled by homeless scavengers, a vicious firefight erupted en route, shattering all vehicle windows and killing 2 of Diane's subordinates. Wang Hao lost complete bladder control from sheer terror. Upon reaching the station overrun with mutated zombies, Diane's crew ventured inside to search for fuel, losing 2 more gang members to the undead. Once we'd filled our gas tanks and prepared to leave, Diane dropped his friendly pretense, pressing a pistol hard against my temple. Thanks for leading us straight to the fuel reserve, Chin Yu. With these supplies delivered home, I'm the safe zone's new hero. His 2 surviving underlings raised their firearms to lock me down. I smirked unruffled. Have you forgotten someone who swore to shield me from bullets? Diane glanced at the trembling Wang Hao and burst into mocking laughter, tossing a spare handgun his way. Pick up the gun and put a bullet in this bitch, and I'll spare your worthless life. Shaking like a leaf, Wang Hao grasped the pistol, torn between fear and greed. Wang Hao, if you're a man, turn that gun on Diane, I roared. Bang! Diane fired a warning shot inches from his feet. Make your choice fast, brat. Petrified out of his mind, Wang Hao twisted the gun's barrel to point directly at my chest. I feigned shock and heartbreak. Earlier you swore undying love and vowed to take bullets for me, yet a single gunpoint makes you turn on your supposed beloved. Smart as you are, you're still a hopeless romantic fool, Diane jeered. Never trust a man's empty promises. Face twisted with malice, Wang Hao snarled. Quit talking. You're marked for death anyway. Die for my bright future. I'm destined to change the world and fulfill my life's calling. So your sacrifice is necessary out of love for me. Amused by his boundless shamelessness, I pressed. Fine, then admit honestly in front of Diane whether you've ever truly loved me. Growling impatiently, Diane pointed his weapon at Wang Hao. Cut the sappy act and tell the truth already. Cornered from both sides, Wang Hao snapped into a screaming confession. I never loved you. Every sweet word was a performance to build my public image. I'm nothing but a spineless coward. Happy now? A satisfied smile tugged my mouth's corner. The hidden dashcam inside the truck had captured every word flawlessly. My plan was complete, Diane grunted. Finish her off. I lifted 3 extended fingers slowly. It's your turn to die instead. Instantly, Diane's vision blurred and swirled. His 2 remaining gangsters crumpled unconscious onto the cabin floor. I'd laced the enclosed vehicle's interior with odorless slow-acting poison timed to activate once they'd confessed their crimes. Kicking the discarded handgun aside, I drew my own sidearm and executed the incapacitated criminals cleanly. Wang Hao dropped to his knees, having inhaled only a minimal toxic dose to remain conscious. Groveling desperately, Xiao Yu, spare me. Credit this fuel haul to my name to save my ruined reputation. ignoring his pleas. I put a bullet through Diane's skull before turning to stare down the terrified man at my feet. This lifetime, I'd strip away every layer of his hypocritical mask and leave him trapped in endless suffering with no escape from despair. On the drive back, I forced Wang Hao behind the steering wheel. When our truck loaded with precious gasoline crested the desert ridge into sight of the waiting convoy, cheers erupted across the entire group. Our hero's back. Wang Hao climbed out soaking in adoration, spinning a fabricated tale of single-handedly outsmarting and executing Diane's gang amid deadly odds. The travelers applauded his heroic virtue, and I kept silent, letting him claim all credit willingly. 3 days later, we rolled safely into the safe zone. The following morning, I received a court summons for formal trial. From the judge's bench, the presiding magistrate stared sternly. Qin Yu, multiple witnesses accuse you of premeditated murder of Diane and 6 other travelers. How do you plead? Wang Hao took the witness stand, wearing a sanctimonious, disgusted scowl. All evidence proves your bloody crimes. Stop lying. Your reckless greed cost innocent lives and enraged the public. The hostile mob of resentful thugs and misled civilians joined in with vicious accusations against me. Remaining calm, I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. Your Honor, I hold irrefutable proof. Footage from the dashcam played across the courtroom's large screen for all to see. Diane's death threats against me. Wang Hao's trembling surrender to their coercion. His cold confession of never loving me and using me for clout. Plus his groveling plea to steal all mission credit for himself. Dead silence fell over the courtroom as his decades-long curated gentlemanly persona shattered completely into dust. Turn it off. That footage is forged. Wang Hao shrieked, lunging for the equipment before I sent him flying with a brutal kick to the torso. Next up on screen was case evidence compiled by my high-ranking military best friend, detailing every horrific felony committed by Diane's gang pre- and post-apocalypse. Human trafficking, female abduction and abuse, highway convoy robbery and mass murder. Public opinion flipped on a dime. Enraged spectators roared their hatred toward Wang Hao. Fraud. Coward. You killed Captain Li Shui and tried framing our survival hero. The judge delivered immediate judgment. Qin Yu cleared of all charges and commended for vital supply retrieval. Wang Hao convicted of fraud and indirect manslaughter of squad personnel. Sentenced to life hard labor effective immediately. Credited for securing life-saving gasoline against impossible odds. I rapidly climbed the safe zone's command ranks over 3 years, rising from deputy team leader all the way to chief of the Core Search and Rescue Division. Meanwhile, Wang Hao wasted away performing grueling penal labor in prison, aging prematurely to look 60 despite being only 30 years old. One day while escorting a convict transfer detail, I spotted him during yard exercise, throwing himself against the wire fence with tear-streaked cheeks. He begged desperately, "Xiao Yu, you came for me. I know you still care. Plead my case to the leadership. This prison is living hell." Glancing down at him like an insignificant bug, I said, "Go preach your lofty, unworldly ambitions to your fellow inmates and see who's foolish enough to fund your schemes anymore." Shaking violently, he pulled a sealed letter from his inner pocket, begging through tears, "Deliver this to Commander's daughter Miss Yi for our late mother's sake, and I'll never trouble you again." In my previous life, he'd endlessly exploited his mother's dying last wish to torment and drain me dry. Now he still used her memory as a bargaining chip. Curious about his new plot, I accepted the envelope. Back home, I opened the letter. Seemingly harmless formal pleasantries covered the page. But my trusted friend's lab testing revealed invisible ink hidden across the paper. Once treated to expose the hidden script, Wang Hao's sycophantic confession to Miss Yi laid bare his full escape blueprint. Dear Miss Yi, no guilt plagues me for abandoning Qin Yu. I've come to terms with letting our broken past go for our bright shared future. Her life means nothing beside our lifelong happiness together. I love you. Yi. Fine by me if he insisted on digging his own grave. I forwarded the original love letter to Miss Yi alongside a supplementary USB drive packed with damning evidence. Footage of Wang Hao's humiliating abuse at the brute gang's hands on the convoy. Plus clips of him groveling before predatory inmates for scraps of food after incarceration. The most damning audio clip captured him bragging to his cellmate on his lice-infested bunk. That rich heiress falls for my fake sorrows every visit. I'll snap compromising photos once I break free to share with the boys. Enraged upon viewing the proof of his manipulative exploitation, Miss Yi trembled with unbridled fury, utterly crushed to discover her admired noble scholar was nothing but a filthy, predatory swindler viewing her as a toy. On Wang Hao's pre-planned breakout night, instead of arranging escape assistance, Miss Yi arrived with dozens of armed private guards and the prison warden to ambush the tunnel exit, barely crawling out from underground. Wang Hao was instantly bludgeoned with iron batons. Staring down at his broken, bloodied form wallowing in filth, Miss Yi ordered the prison's worst hardened convicts. Have your fun, but don't let him die quickly. 3 days later, news of his death reached me. Locked in a damp basement cell, he endured far crueler torment than I'd suffered in my past life, screaming and whimpering until his final breath, bathed in sunlight cutting through the apocalypse's perpetual gray haze. I felt every ounce of lingering resentment lift completely. He'd killed me in our first life, and I'd ensured his well-deserved demise in this one. After his passing, I comforted the heartbroken heiress to help her heal from Wang Hao's betrayal. And we soon grew close confidants. Her father, the safe zone commander, valued my loyalty and competence more than ever. I continued leading countless high-risk rescue missions to pull stranded refugees to safety, ultimately fulfilling the meaningful life purpose Wang Hao had only ever lied about chasing. Life is full of rotten parasitic people. Recognize them early, cut ties without hesitation, and protect yourself from irreversible loss.